I've been with my wife for 8 years now. She has primary custody of her daughter Santana, tween. Santana sees her dad, Mark, every other weekend and some holidays. As I've been one of Santana's primary caretakers for the past 7 years, since I moved in with her mom, I've taken care of her more than Mark has, and we're quite close. My wife and I went on to have 2 children, now a kindergartner and a young toddler. I've been a stay-at-home dad since the older child was born. As a result, I make lunches, drive kids to activities, etc. That includes Santana. Mark has always felt insecure about my place in Santana's life. I've always encouraged her relationship with her dad, while also being a place she can go to vent about her parents. I've never asked her to call me dad, but I've clarified that I love her the same as her siblings, and she's also said she loves me and considers me her second dad. Mark also mocks me for my stay-at-home dad role. My wife always shuts him down, and I just ignore him. He has in the past jokingly called me Santana's nanny, and I just roll my eyes and say, "Whatever you think, Mark." I really don't see him much, as my wife will take Santana to her dad's and pick her up. However, my wife was sick yesterday and asked me to pick up Santana. She couldn't get out of bed, and I knew Mark wouldn't drive out to us. He's refused in the past, so I went over to his place to pick her up. He was throwing a barbecue and had some family there. I had never met any of them. Santana ran into my arms, excited to see me, and shouting my name. A few people looked at Mark curiously. He laughed and said, "That's Santana's nanny." I shook my head and said, "I'm her stepfather, Greg. Nice to meet you all." Mark turned red and barely said goodbye to Santana. I didn't think much of it, outside of Mark just being Mark. However, Mark texted my wife later, saying I humiliated him, and given I'd likely never see those people again, I shouldn't have said anything. My wife told him he was overreacting, and he then texted me, saying I had no right to correct him in his own home. He asked what was the big deal if his family thought I was her nanny. Am I the idiot for correcting my stepdaughter's dad? LOL, you're so not the idiot. If you just dryly said, "I'm her stepfather, Greg. Nice to meet you all," that's a great sick burn and a classy way to handle it. He was humiliated because he humiliated himself. If he has a personal stake in making his family believe you're the nanny, he's been telling lies to his family about who you are and that he's playing a lot bigger role in Santana's life than he actually is. That's not your job to get in the middle of that drama, but you don't have to let him lie about you in public to your face without correcting him. You said the right thing. There's no need to let him save face and participate in his lies. If OP hands out burns like that regularly, I hope he carries complimentary soothing cream to give to his victims. Mark has probably told everyone there at some point a nasty story about his ex and her partner. OP turns up, nice and pleasant. His daughter clearly adores OP, and I can see people putting together the puzzle and coming up with a different picture, and Mark was caught in his own BS. In his attempt to humiliate you, he humiliated himself. They call this just desserts. He's salty because it backfired on him. Clearly, he's a deeply insecure person who's likely jealous of your involvement with Santana. If Santana witnessed this, you should tell her that you love her and you love your role as her stepfather. Let her know that Mark's comments about you being the nanny upset you because you are a much more important person in her life than a nanny would be. Make sure Santana knows that you care about her and that her father's comments are hurtful. I have a friend who's 22 and she has her license, but she cannot drive. She's terrified of driving. The driving videos of crashes and her parents being stressed when teaching her messed her up. She got her license and then never drove again. Anyway, she needs to drive everywhere. We're in the US, and driving's pretty important. Usually I'm fine with picking her up and driving her, but I'm so tired of it. If we go out, since I'm the one driving, I can't have a drink. I must pay for more gas. I have to figure out the route. If she's late, well, I'm late. My complaints go on and on. She was complaining about not going anywhere. I reminded her she had a car she could use and that she had a license. I heard the whole spiel of how it's so dangerous, and I told her it's getting old. I said I couldn't be driving you everywhere. At this point, it's pathetic, and she needs to get over it. She hasn't talked to me since and thinks I'm an idiot. Not the idiot. I think it's funny that she said she can't drive because it's dangerous, but it's not dangerous when you drive her everywhere? Make that make sense. I've heard people that can be anxious or scared of driving, and therapy helps. Or she needs to consider Uber and public transport. Exactly. You aren't your friend's personal driver. A professional gets paid. She can't drive her car. Call a taxi or Uber. Move to a town with public transport. Or call somebody else to haul her around. You're being taken advantage of. It's okay to say no. Everyone's the idiot here. She's an idiot for making you late, not contributing to gas, and overall not seeming grateful. But you also crossed the line by calling her pathetic for her fear. I mean, you're partially right, but you were a real idiot about it. If she's terrified of driving, then she shouldn't be behind the wheel because she'll put herself and others at risk. You don't have to drive her everywhere, but you have no right to insult her. I would apologize, but stand and explain how it affects you being her cab. Either she contributes to gas, or she needs to find an alternative method of transportation. Update. Thank you all for the comments. I'm going with a justified idiot on this. I sent a text apologizing for my outburst, but also outlined that I'm not driving her anymore. I explained my frustration and her not showing courtesy by never paying for gas or making me late to activities because she was late. Never mind. I don't feel bad anymore. She texted me back and told me I'm screwing up her social life since she can't afford Uber everywhere, and a lot of creative curses. And for the first time, I was called a Muppet. Didn't understand that insult. I guess she's mad that I won't be a doormat anymore. My son announced his wife's pregnancy at 8 weeks after hearing the heartbeat. Unfortunately, she had a loss around the 10th week. When my son called me on the phone, I was so shocked that I just blurted out, "Why, did she fall?" She did not fall, by the way. I didn't realize I was on speaker during that call, and my daughter-in-law overheard my reaction. When she got pregnant again, they didn't announce it until well into the second trimester. Due to my daughter-in-law ending in a very unexpected C-section, my son requested my help to come over. I cooked, cleaned, did laundry for them, washed the baby, etc. Despite all my hard work, she was still very cold towards me and treated me poorly. I finally asked her why, and she admitted that she was furious when I sounded very blaming when I asked her if she felt that's why her previous pregnancy ended. I told her that I asked if she fell, not to blame her in any sense, but out of concern for her. I said that I am aware that there are other reasons that loss occurs, as my immediate family members have suffered the same. I was very sad to hear the news. All of us were so happy and excited about her first pregnancy. Then the next day heard the sad news. We all called to speak to her directly and see how she was, but were told she was not ready to speak. We tried to give her the space and time she needed for the situation. I don't think she believed me, though. Am I the idiot for asking if my daughter-in-law fell? That's why she had a loss? You are the idiot. I mean, that's a pretty tone-deaf thing to say, right when learning the news. You could have asked if she was okay or something. You know, like a person. Who thinks about a fall? Who thinks about a fall? Everyone who watches telenovelas. That's 99% of losses in those stories. When something like this happens, the appropriate response is to ask if she's okay and let them decide if they wish to share any more details. OP's not entitled to know any more than what her son and daughter-in-law choose to share with her. Asking anything beyond whether they're okay is prying. OP, you were told she lost it, and your first words were why? Here's a tip for you. When someone gives you big news, traumatic news, something obviously huge in their lives, it is perfectly acceptable and preferable to take a small deep breath and a small pause This is where you think about what to say, instead of spewing out the first thing that pops into your head. This is one of those situations where you need to tuck your tail and profusely apologize, not because you had bad intentions, but because the situation is so painful that it just doesn't matter. Pride doesn't have a place here. Don't make excuses. Don't apologize through your son. Speak to her directly, genuinely, and lovingly. I'm sorry I said something hurtful during a terrible time in your life, and there's nothing I can do to reverse that stupid remark. Just please know I realize how insensitive I was. Update. Am I the idiot for asking if my daughter-in-law fell when I heard of her loss? I now see that I was acting like the passageway of excrement. I guess I now understand why I was never invited again to their house to see my other newborn grandkids after that. They only introduced their new babies when each turned over half a year old. I don't think I'll apologize regarding the fall comment, since the birth happened 7 years ago, and it's just weird if I suddenly bring up the topic now that they have a new baby again. I might be accused of pandering, like my daughter-in-law has accused me of gift bombing previously. She was the one who treated me poorly over a long ago comment I didn't even know was wrong, while I was working very hard to help her postpartum. So she apologized, and I accepted. I was really helpful and never slacked off. I cooked, cleaned their unit. It's only 700 square feet, so not much, luckily. Did the laundry, showered and massaged the baby, etc. My son recognized how helpful I've been and let me stay for 5 weeks. I felt that my daughter-in-law took my help for granted and was disappointed she kept a grudge over something I so innocently said. She didn't even confront me sooner. She waited a full year. I was just wondering why she was very cold, only wanting to eat in her room with my son, and not very welcoming to me when I worked very hard in her apartment. My daughter-in-law eventually apologized for her cold treatment towards me. Oh wow, you stayed for 5 whole weeks right after she gave birth in a 700-foot apartment? My current apartment is smaller, and if I were upset with my mother-in-law and she stayed for 5 weeks while I was vulnerable in postpartum, I'd never speak to her again. I can't believe she apologized to you, but you haven't apologized to her. You still haven't apologized to her for hurting her feelings to the point that she spent an entire year hurting over it. Why are you here if you aren't interested in actually hearing your judgment? You still don't get it. It's still her fault in your mind. You are the victim in your mind. The issue here isn't her actions to you. It's your refusal to see the pain you caused her. My 18 biological parents got pregnant very young. I won't elaborate. For some reason, they decided they could raise 1 kid, but not 2. I was put up for adoption, and my parents have given me a great life. I will attend university this fall, and my grandparents are paying for it. Not all of it, as I got a scholarship. I'm not trying to brag. My family has helped me achieve, and I would not be where I am without them. I recently turned 18, and my twin was finally told that I exist and got a hold of me. I'm not interested in meeting him or his family. I don't know how they chose him over me, and I don't want to know. I have a family that has never once treated me as unwanted, and I think I'd be spitting in their face to have anything to do with those people. My family understands, but my twin thinks I'm an idiot for not wanting to meet him or my biological parents. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I'm adopted too. It comes with a special set of privileges and challenges that people who were raised in their biological families don't understand. The only idiot here is your biological parents. Twins have such a unique and intricate bond. Keeping one and putting one up for adoption is so screwed. I do feel for your twin, though. I imagine it's also very confusing, sad, and crappy to be in his shoes. I'm also an adult adoptee. You're allowed to choose the level of relationship you have with your biological relatives and don't owe anybody anything. I do want to push back on something you said, though, gently. It would not be spitting in your parents' faces if you decided on contact with your bio relatives. You love your parents, They love you, and your relationship is based on years of commitment and support. Nobody's going to replace them. It would be more like looking up an estranged second cousin and getting to know them. They're just somebody you have a genetic connection to, not an act of rejection. Maybe you'll never want to meet any of them, and that's absolutely fine. I had no desire to connect with my bio family until I had a baby myself, and then I wanted to understand more about why they made that decision. We have occasional contact, but nothing profound. Some people never feel that desire. I just want you to try not to think of it as an attack, because if your feelings do change one day, it could give you unnecessary guilt. I get what your brother's feeling and what you're feeling. You need to do what you need to do. And frankly, the lashing out at you isn't cool. He needs to do some work on himself. Don't get me wrong, I get the anger, but the lashing out isn't good. You are allowed to cut this off if it invades your peace. Info: are you a girl? Because if you are and they kept the boy, ugh. Ooh, if that is true, OP's birth parents are really idiots. I was going to overlook that given that I don't know anything about their financial or other situation at adoption time. If they gave up a female because they wanted to keep the male, that makes them the ultimate monsters in my book, and I would never want anything to do with them. I, 23 male, have been with my current company for a year now. Recently, a new guy, Jack, joined our team fresh out of college. Last Friday, my manager invited everyone to a bar after work. There, Jack told everyone about an achievement that he obtained over spring break. He visited his 150th country, Cambodia. In contrast to everyone else, who was asking things such as, what was the best or worst strangest thing you ate? Which countries were your favorite? And any cool stories? I just said, good for you, and went back to my drink. Jack noticed me being quiet and asked me why I wasn't joining in. I said, don't worry about me. But Jack kept pressing the issue. I finally said, Jack, visiting 150 countries is cool and all, but it doesn't say anything about you as a person. It just means you had rich parents who could afford to travel internationally several times a year. I grew up poor, literally worked my butt off in high school, got a full ride merit scholarship, and did everything humanly possible to land my current six-figure job. Rich people who think they're better than everyone else just because they had rich parents are a huge pet peeve of mine. But my coworkers don't know any of that, since I like to keep work and my personal life separate. Jack got really quiet after that and left soon afterward. Now it's morning and I wonder if I should have kept my mouth shut. You are the idiot. So, visiting 150 countries is really cool. There was no need to crap all over it and make a stink. Traveling to 150 countries is not insignificant. It means that your colleague likely went to places that were not luxurious. People who travel like Jack are likely curious about the world and other cultures, and that's nothing too slight. It does say something about him as a person. He never said he was better than anyone else. You just assumed that because of your own insecurities. Yep, your jealousy got the best of you in this situation. You worked hard. No one can or will ever take that away from you. But you do need to come to a place of resolution that people who grew up even moderately wealthy can also work hard too. Remember, it is better to have fake friends than real enemies at work. This 1000%. My Lord, it goes far. I think that while you can have your own thoughts on something, it's best to keep them private and even lie about it when it involves work relationships, unless it gets into really bad behavior territory. Eventually, Jack will tell someone at work what happened, and it'll spread. If Jack seemed like an okay guy, OP's just gonna look like a little old sourpuss, and you know people are gonna add jealousy to that description. This is the main life lesson.